Today was an interesting day in media culture, an interesting day in sports, an interesting day in Black racial conversations. Today, OJ Simpson passed away at the age of 76. And OJ's death went just about the way I thought it would. White people acted like they were going to throw second line parties and parades. Black people acted like Martin Luther King died. And I was irritated on both sides. And so I had some thoughts. I made a video. I said, look, this man was a monster, not a martyr. People called me an Uncle Tom. People called me a coon. People called me racist for saying that OJ Simpson was rightfully found not guilty, because he was rightfully found not guilty. And so basically my timeline is in shambles. And it's in shambles from the right-wing racists and the left-wing people who think, or not even left-wing people, just Black people. They ain't all that left-wing. They just Black and think they're on the left. And they all mad at me. So I brought somebody in who could help me understand such delicate matters, because she has handled these delicate cultural and social matters with aplomb. You may know her from her televised beatdown, which I'm not sure how it was not a federal crime. Her televised beatdown of Eric Adams on The Breakfast Club recently. He's the mayor of New York, allegedly. And you may know her from her own so many great programs, from Olayemi Friends to Olurin to all the other stuff on her YouTube channel. You got to check her out. Her name is Olayemi Olurin, and she is one of my dear friends and dear friend of the show. OJ Simpson is dead. First of all, how'd you respond to that when you saw that?
I quote tweeted it and I said, damn.
That's a safe answer.
Yeah, just damn. That could go however. I was like, who was here? It's taking everybody.
No, people were so mad. So help me understand this from your perspective, right? OJ was not. There are people who do awful things and Black people still love them for a reason. Yeah. Right? They made a great album. They gave away money. You know what I mean? They loved us. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, like Miles Davis did some awful things in his personal life. But no one ever feels like Miles Davis wasn't with us. And so I understand the tensions and the contradictions that people wrestle with.
But OJ is not somebody who was ever interested in the Black community. He always wanted to distance himself.
That's what it seems like to me. As soon as he could get out, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I agree with that. I think that's true. OJ has never been somebody who is he's not out here going out of his way to identify as a Black man, at least not before the case. But I don't think for Black people it's about how OJ feels as an individual and what OJ represents. I think Black people, we have a criminal system across this country that day in, day out makes it its business to railroad Black people. And for generations. Like when you think about it, it's a little insulting that white people could even feel so offended or affronted at the possibility that the OJ case didn't go the way they want. Meanwhile, the vast majority of what the criminal system is there to make sure that Black people catch, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think for a lot of Black people, it's watching a legal system, especially if you think about the kind of cases that were highly televised at the time, like what was happening in the 90s and what they were seeing. If you're a Black person that is seeing this legal system be weaponized against your community a million times, and then you see a case that's being made to be so high profile because this is a Black man and this is a white woman, regardless of how that Black man feels, it's the racial tensions or the reality that this is a Black man and a white woman that's making them foam at the mouth and be as racist as they're being. And then the criminal system that they have weaponized against Black people backfires on them because they violate their seen in plain sight, violating, engaging in police misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, and just fumbling the case. Then as a Black person, you're gonna be excited to see them get what they give. So I understand the excitement, despite how OJ himself as an individual felt.
And that makes sense to me. I'm old. Like I was in high school during the OJ verdict. I was, watching this play out. I remember sitting and supposed to be watching the NBA finals, and instead I was watching OJ once again try to use a white vehicle to escape a Black reality, riding down the highway in that Bronco. And I remember thinking, wow, this nigga guilty. Like I didn't know nothing. I didn't know a lot of things, but I was like, I don't know. I have a more nuanced understanding of the law and stuff like that. But at the time, I was a teenager. I was like, yeah, any nigga that get this van in this truck and run from the police after they catch him with all that blood and all them dead white people. Like he probably killed him. That was my thought. But by the time he got found not guilty, I understood what you just described. I was like, okay, yeah, the system is not structured to support us. I think OJ did it, but I also think that they cheated.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes police do that. That is a common thing that police say and do, right? And you see, even if you watch some propaganda TV shows like Law and Order, they'll make it seem like the prosecutor is the DA, the public defender, excuse me, is cheating, and the other people are cheating, and the defense attorneys.
They always act like constitutional rights is cheating. And I said something also, I want us to stop as a Black community when Black people win cases or when Black people are exonerated because their rights were violated. We like to say it was a technicality or a loophole. And no, it's the right decision. There's a reason for that. Those are people's rights. They're violating their rights. Like, okay, so
yes, and that is literally what I said today. I said, OJ's. I'm gonna read you what I said because I've been getting dragged for like hours. Like, I can't. Something else could have happened in the world. I wouldn't know because my timeline is just calling me all kinds of idiots. But and it's amazing to see. But basically, what I said was, let me see if I can find it. Because people are mad. People are big mad. I said OJ Simpson was an abusive liar who abandoned his community long before he killed 2 people in cold blood. His acquittal for murder was the correct and necessary result of a racist criminal legal system. But he's still a monster, not a martyr.
Yeah.
And the point I was making was what you just said. It was the correct and necessary verdict because Mark Fuhrman lied.
Yeah.
He got caught lying. So, like, I mean, from a legal perspective, like, is it wrong for me to say, you know, he did it, but it was still the correct result?
No, it's not. It's definitely not wrong. So I guess I have complicated and nuanced feelings on this because of my being a defense attorney, right? So I guess this is what I'm going to say on the guilt and innocence thing. I've represented like 1,000 people. And what I realized from doing that is that nobody but those people has any fucking idea what happened. Like, unless I have represented a bunch of people and I have got up in court and I will always say, my client, we deny all of these allegations discharged. I will fight that case to tooth and nail, and I can make what case I make based on what my evidence, what I believe I have, and the prosecutor does the same thing. But we actually don't know shit. I really cannot definitively tell you at all. And it's something I actually stopped exploring at all. I really don't think it's relevant to me as a defense attorney, but when I really realized that I didn't know was the first time I ever had a client where we had a bumpy relationship. And I deserved that. I remember what happened. I was representing a Black woman who had she had 3 cases. I was arraigning her on 3 cases, and each case was with like the family it was a family member of her baby daddy. And they were all like outlandish these accusations were like, I was like, yeah, she definitely did that. Like in my mind, like when I'm asked, I swear it was like, there's no way the family is just like, it's a conspiracy. The family's all out to get to you, blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking that, being like sure of it and kind of button heads with her. And there really was no reason for me to like protest or you know what I mean? Like I didn't need her innocence or guilt really didn't matter as far as what I needed to do to get her out or anything like that. But I did kind of express skepticism, and I continued to feel skepticism, confident that she was lying. She wasn't lying. I remember like eventually finding out like she wasn't lying. Like the family, like none of them were any peaches on the beach. You know what I mean? But I remember that really
when your attorney be like, "Oh shit, you really didn't do this."
No, dead ass, like dead ass. And that's what I realized. Like I really don't know. You really don't know. And so for me, I don't. It's not something I really I concern myself with. But I will say this. I feel differently about OJ and his cases because something that happens when cases are sensationalized, right? Or when cases have a lot of media attention or people feel passionately one way or the next is that they're focusing on a case without actually focusing on the cases. And what I mean by that is this. OJ was acquitted for that. That was his right. It was his right to take that case to trial. He won that because his rights had been violated. Everything that happened on the up and up, and he exercised the system the way it's allegedly supposed to be done. And yet, what I really have a problem with that we never seem to talk about when we're talking about OJ is the actual case he went to prison for. Because in that case, it is very clear on the record, pretty much explicitly so if you've even heard the parole hearings on that case, is that they wanted to punish him for the case where where he exercised his rights and he was acquitted, and they used another opportunity to punish him for something that should be something we all talk about, and it's never a part of the dialogue.
And how should we talk about that? Because you're right. So basically, y'all, if y'all don't know, OJ Simpson was in Vegas and he said that somebody took his memorabilia. He went and got it back, and the juice was loose. And when
They threw the book at him.
they threw the, I mean, they got him for everything. He basically ran and got his shit and left, but they got him for like kidnapping, theft. They basically gave him 30 years for jaywalking. It was like basically like, we're going to give you every possible conviction, every charge, and then ultimately every conviction for something that is, most people would you say most people would probably not go to jail for?
Yeah. At the very least, a tiny fraction at that time. And then at his parole hearings, they were actively, when they were talking about their reasons for why they, like, I don't know if you've ever seen OJ's parole hearings, but it was heartbreaking. Personally, to me, it was heartbreaking, like watching it, like, because this, at the end of the day, this is an old man. There's a reason why, let me just say this, there is a reason why the legal system has like statute of limitations and all these different things. It's because it's the idea that people change throughout the course of their time history, is that people should not have to spend their life, they're supposed to be able to rely on comfort that they're not going to get got for something that happened decades earlier or whatever when they're living a different life, right? So when you see this old man already having been disproportionately punished because they're mad, they're exercising their, basically it's retaliation for having beat the system the first time, which again is the rights. And then they're up there saying to him, responding to him, and basically and talking about the case that he was acquitted for as their reason for why they're denying him parole. And the reason why that should matter to us is like people get focused on like, okay, well, fuck OJ. OJ's bad. OJ deserved this. But that's not the point. It would think about everybody else and the average person that is in the criminal system and the day-to-day person, which is usually poor Black and brown people, right? What happens if you are penalized? If you don't, you're either plea deals are weaponized against, cash bail is weaponized against you in order to force you to take plea deals. And then, or you have the problem, or you go to trial and then you suffer the trial tax that if you lose a trial, they punish you disproportionately for having gone to trial. And then if you win at trial, that they'll punish you at a later date. They'll use some trumped up foolishness to be able to do that. So these are a litany of ways that our rights are being violated in plain sight, and nobody's talking about it because they're too focused on being upset at the individual person and a case that they've gotten too invested in.
And I think that makes sense, right? So that's why for me, it's like, I don't like OJ for lots of reasons, right?
Yeah.
Before and after Nicole Brown, Simpson, and Ronald Goldman died, let's say he didn't kill them. He died, right? But before that, OJ was trash. And after that, OJ was trash. And so I don't like him, but I still don't want to see him go to prison when it's clear that the police planted evidence, or at the very least lied about some things. He pled the fifth on the planting evidence part, but Furman certainly made it very clear it became clear rather that Furman lied about being racist and lied about using racist slurs. So if I can't trust the police and the integrity of the process, then I could never get a fair shake. So fine, I can deal with that. I can also deal with the people who say the civil trial was fair, because people remember he had a civil trial, but that's a different burden of proof. So that makes sense to me as well. But could you break them down to me how OJ can be found guilty for murder, or not guilty for murder, but guilty for the civil trial based on basically the same evidence?
Because in a criminal trial, you have to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, much, much higher standard. And in a civil trial, you have to be found guilty, like I think preponderance of the evidence, a much, much lower burden. So you could get somebody
like
civil.
51-49.
Yeah, exactly. Or honestly, more than that. Like the be beyond a reasonable doubt requires much more than what it takes to win a civil case.
Right. Civil, so you got to pick one.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So for me, that makes sense, right? Like, I think in a civil trial, hell yeah, they should get all OJ shit, right?
Yeah.
But then OJ, and I've never seen in a case, in a murder case, you win the case, and then you spend so much time taunting the victim. OJ, literally wrote a book called "If I Did It."
Yeah.
Like, it's like he was mocking people. It's like
Here's my thing. White supremacists mock us like that every day. Kyle Rittenhouse been on a tour for years. Like they do that. They do that all the time, actually. You know what I mean? There are people putting Derek Chauvin gifs in my comments as we speak. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, And you know what I mean? Like, I guess here's the thing, and this is going to sound controversial to people because people look at, the criminal system and what happens there as though it matters fundamentally, and it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, whether or not, because if I think about, if the reason why OJ is a monster, let's break it down, right? The reason OJ is a monster is because he abuses women, right? He abuses women because he was always, we know this to be that he abused Nicole before he ever allegedly murdered her, right? Like, we know for certain that there was domestic violence. And the other reason why you wouldn't like him as a black person is that socially he wasn't a conscious black person, right? So what about how if my problem is the abuse, is that women are being abused, right? Or that OJ is not a socially conscious black person, what about how he responded to the criminal trial, or how the criminal trial was resolved deals with any of that? Because the reality is, like, the reason why he's being abusive or he abused women isn't addressed. That doesn't, with that, we didn't have a major social, the black community didn't have this major transformative moment where we decided, let's address how these things happen. Let's talk about him being an abuser. Let's step back, right? And there's at least like multiple levels that we'd have to get to that, because between the conversation of him abusing women is the conversation that this is a white woman and the different dynamics and social things that come into play about that. So we're levels away from actually getting to addressing anything that deals with the root cause of the violence. And then as far as his social consciousness, we didn't require that. That wasn't even required of him, because, like I said, it was never about him. It's about what he represents. You know what I mean? And all this. So to me, the verdict doesn't matter. I don't care whether or not OJ is a martyr or any of that is like immaterial to me. And I guess I don't feel like black people are wrong, right, or one way or the next in terms of how they respond to it, because every single day America plays in our face. Like, the police killed at least 1,200 people last year.
I feel you. I guess what I struggle with is, like, I don't want to be like white people.
I
you know what I mean? Like,
but are we like white people? Like, are we like white people if we don't care about that?
No, I guess what I mean is, white people play in our face. America plays in our face. They, a whole bunch of people get killed by police officers. They dismiss it. I feel that. And so that often becomes like an excuse or a reason that people use to say, well, I don't got to care about OJ. They don't care about us. But I'm not sure that following their example, and by they, I mean the people who support violent policing, etc., are models that I want to follow. I'm like, I don't want us to celebrate. I don't want us to celebrate OJ. I
don't think people celebrate OJ though. I think they celebrate the verdict. You know what I mean? I don't think they celebrate OJ. I think they celebrate what seems representative of a moment white people were upset. And I really think that just is really what it is. White people felt, I think this has less to do with our response, or our emotion as a community is tied directly in response to how white people were acting. If white people were not foaming at the mouth that they did not get one of millions of black men that they did get, you know what I mean? If white people were not carrying on like that, we wouldn't give a fuck. We would be like, oh yeah, fuck him. That would be their attitude. But it's because they go and be racist and they act the way that they act about it. That's why we have to act like that.
I definitely get a perverse pleasure watching the anger that white people have at OJ Simpson. Like, because again, they act as if they're outraged about injustice, but they're not outraged about George Zimmerman. They're not outraged about the Rodney King beating and anything in between. In the decades between those two things, they're not outraged. It's only OJ. It's like, we want to get every one of y'all, and we missed one.
And ultimately, and here's the thing, right? The thing that white people wanted to do, they still get to do. The reason why they're upset, here's the thing: the reason why black people are excited is almost like a relief. It's because you know the way that they will spin this, how they will use this and weaponize this against other black men. If they're able to convict this black man and paint him as abuser and paint him as brutes, and they're able to, like, quote on, like, take down this successful black man and blah 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 and do all of that, it really shows that no black man is untouchable, and it shows how, how they're going to treat you. So that's really what it is. But from white people's perspective is, they've still mad. It's not like they ever allowed that man the feelings of innocence, right? When white people beat the system, which is every fucking day, which is every fucking day. They get to walk around like that's the truth, and they force feed us all to believe it, right? They will be foaming at the mouth before they let you call Kyle Rittenhouse the murderer that he is. You know what I mean? They will be defending police officers for murders that you are witnessing on video. You see it all the time. You see it all the fucking time. So it's like, did they not get what they wanted? Ultimately, they continue to paint black men as violent and brutes and never give black men the benefit of the doubt. They continue to ignore whatever the results are of the criminal system. Even in the case of that case, they proceeded to ignore what the fuck happened, and they managed to punish him. So really and truly, if black people get a little bit of a giggle off because they're still somehow they feel like they lost something, then by all means, that's how I see it.
I feel that 1,000%. And if that's what people are, I can live with it. The vibes I get, or at least to my feed, and maybe I'm following the wrong people, is people either saying he really didn't do it, which is crazy, or people saying, they started talking about him like, oh, he was a good dude, rest up, big homie, it's such and I'm like, this dude, you talk about playing our face. Let me just show you one thing before we move on. I'm gonna show you this clip. You probably seen it before, but for those who didn't, here's a clip that goes around social media about OJ sort of talking to a reporter who asked him about his past.
For me, and I genuinely was surprised.
Just did you do it?
No, I didn't.
I think it was his idea of a joke.
Nope.
And this is it.
Did not do it. No, I didn't. Nope, did not do it.
Man, it's so unserious.
Unserious is a good word for OJ.
Listen, I just would be a liar if I pretended I care, like whether he's guilty. Like, it's just not something, again, the kind of defense attorney I am. It's like one of those things where people be like, oh, how can you represent this person if they did? It's not something I stress myself out trying to figure out, because I've been wrong before in real life with clients I know. Like, I represented a white woman once that gave me a whole story, like a long story about this man being an abuser and blah, 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 da, 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 da. And like the next morning, I was woken up like top of the morning to her trying to destroy footage she ain't told me exists. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, you really don't be knowing. Like, that's the thing, right? It's like the world can vary. How many times has the world been adamantly sure of something, and then they watch a documentary or a docuseries tell them something different, and they're like, oh shit, we all got it wrong. Then another docuseries comes out, oh shit, we all got it right. Like, you don't actually know. True. I don't personally know. I think, to me, I like to look at cases in terms of what the implications are for the rest of us. And in the case of OJ, there are actually a lot of ways in which the system fucked him in a way that they fuck black people every day, even though, because Pete, the problem is people like to stop the analysis of what OJ's criminal stuff at that case. They need to talk about the second case and everything that was done and what that means for how black people are taxed in the legal system every day. That's how I feel about that one.
That's fair. I'm gonna say one more thing. If I do ever be the case, especially if I did it, but even if I didn't do it, I ain't writing no books about it. I ain't making no pranks about it. I'm not walking up to no white reporters' doors going, like, I ain't doing none of that shit, because I know they want revenge. It's almost like I always wondered if there was a part of him that felt guilty for getting away with it, and he almost needed to like.
I don't think so. I think him not expecting that. Him not anticipating retaliation, to me, is a reflection of the original problem with him, is how divorced he was from his own blackness. Like, his own, he forgot the reality of what it is to be a black man. No matter how much you think you class out of blackness, you don't.
Yeah. And OJ don't do nothing but mess with white women. He don't do nothing but hang with white people. He thought that could shield him from a very, very black reality, and it just didn't.